It's a midweek podcast. Charlie, how are we?
I'm doing good, man. A lot of good series last week. We've got a ton to get through today, and just a lot to cover in general.
A lot. And it's getting kind of crazy. I think when we talk about the season and the contenders, I think
Yeah,
there's a clear, I think, handful of contenders now.
I would say
Um,
so.
I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because I was just having a conversation about this the other day before we get into winners, losers briefly. I think this was relevant. I was just having a conversation the other day with somebody about the NBA playoffs starting
Yeah,
and about how there's so many contenders. And that's kind of weird because usually there's not this many contenders, but it feels like
yeah,
this year in the NBA playoffs, there's a lot of damn contenders. And I feel
yeah,
like in college baseball, that's how it feels right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially with what happened this weekend. Like, what Kentucky did, I know LSU, like it feels like there's more contenders than just, oh, LSU's the best team. I don't think that's the case anymore. But we'll get into all that. There's just so many contenders. And I'm gonna
no,
we're
there are, man. There are. I mean, like Virginia's ranked eighth, coming off a disappointing series loss, but I mean, they're still single digit losses, and they have the best catcher in baseball in Kyle Teal. Edgington's a really good pitcher. They've got a ton of guys. Geloff, who I haven't talked about yet. Like, there's a lot of dudes. We still have, like, I mentioned this now the last couple weeks. So I guess it counts as talking about it, but like nationally and us included, like Arkansas just doesn't lose, and they've remained fifth and been a really quiet five this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad we started the show like this, really kind of off the cuff, but starting it talking about teams that need to be talked about. And we try to do
Yeah,
that throughout our winners, our losers, our weekend rotation, then ultimately teams with series picks, which we're about to get into. But you make a really good point. There's a lot of teams, especially in the top 10 this year, that and maybe we fell victim to this as well. It's not just LSU.
yeah.
If it were me right now, and maybe I'm biased, but I would probably have Wake Forest as the number one team in the country. And if not, like, I think there's other SEC teams that have better resumes than LSU. But I understand if they're not going to lose series, you got to keep them at one. I get that. But
Yeah,
I've heard a lot of people talking about that this week. But like you said, Arkansas, ultra consistent top five. Vanderbilt might have the best SEC resume.
yeah.
Florida's nasty. Wake is really good. And then South Carolina, some people think they're the top team in the country. So it's crazy. I'm glad we got all that out on the table. Charlie, all those teams I mentioned, top 10 teams, are winners. So what better
Oh yeah.
segue to start with our winners?
All right, do me a start.
Yeah, I want you to
All right.
lead us
One
off. Get on base
one
for
of
us.
the biggest winners of the weekend is Vanderbilt. They got a series win over my beloved South Carolina Gamecocks this year. They're now 13 and 12 in conference play, number one in the SEC in that category. Sole possession of the SEC too, not just East or West. Um, Kind of like similar situation with Arkansas, where you could argue that this is like a number one or number two kind of team, but the fact is that Florida, Wake, and LSU have just not done anything yet to really prove them worthy of being knocked out of those top 1 through 3 positions yet.
It's a very good point. Just like LSU feels like they haven't done enough to get knocked out. And the only reason I say, like, I don't think there's a clear number one. Like last year, the clear number one was Tennessee.
Yeah,
It
the gap
doesn't
was much
feel,
wider.
it feels like maybe the media hype and attention has had that same feeling for LSU throughout the duration of the season. But at this point, you can't really clearly say that. Like, yes, they're the consensus number one team because every media outlet we can find, they're number one. But you make a
Yeah,
great point. Those Vandy boys, man, I like that winner. And that comes out of a position of humility from you because I don't believe you picked them to win that
I did not.
series.
I did not. I was hoping Carolina looked good on us the first game though. They won it with 14 runs against the whole squad, but you know it happens. And the other thing too, I'd say you mentioned the gap with LSU and like LSU through the rest of the top 10 versus Tennessee last year. I think fairly unfairly, I think people are doubting LSU more, and me included to an extent, just because some of the injuries have been piling up on the pitching staff. So it keeps getting
Yes.
thinner. So that it's been very interesting to see how that goes along, especially once it comes like playoff postseason time, if that's going to bite them in the ass.
No, it's a really good point. And I think that is where some of the speculation is starting to come from.
Yeah,
They're a little bit injured on the pitching staff, but they're still so good. Their offense is elite. But you look at some of the offensive numbers of the Floridas, of the Wakes, of the
yeah,
Vandies now.
they're not
Like
far
Van,
behind.
like that's what I'm saying. Like on paper, on sexiness of names, yes, they're the best. But when we look at winning and losing ball games, there's other teams that are doing it at the same rate as them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
a team you just mentioned in Vanderbilt, is doing an incredible job of that. So I'm glad you picked the Vandy boys for your first winner because they're just continuing to win. They're continuing to win at a really high level. And honestly, Charlie, I had a futures bet on Wake Forest at the beginning of the season to win a national title. If I had any other money that I would want to insert, I'd probably put it on Vanderbilt right now.
Fair.
Doesn't seem like they're going to lose many games. For
Absolutely.
me, my first winner, Charlie, is going to be the standings in the Big 12. Go look at that table and tell me about the chaos that's going on in that conference. It's so close. We don't know who the best team in this league is. I mean, you look at the conference and all but 3 teams have 22 plus wins.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 have 17, 13, and 19. And you look at the conference record, the top team is Texas at 8-4, and the bottom team is Oklahoma, who went to the College World Series a season ago at 4-8. So you only have basically a weekend or 2 of games separating the first place team and the last place team. It's so close, especially at the top of the conference with Texas 8-4, Kansas State 9-6, TCU 7-5, which that's a whole nother conversation. West Virginia 5-4, and Oklahoma State 8-7. Texas Tech, who some people think they're the best team in the league, they're at 6-6, 4th from last. So it's a winner for me because it's so competitive, but they're all beating up on each other, which hurts them because I don't think you can say any of these guys are going to be definitely not a national seed, a top 8, a top 16. I don't think any Big 12 team can have that resume now unless they just say, oh, the Big 12 is so good they beat up on each other. But, they're beating up on each other, so they're all not ranked that high. So that's a winner.
That's a good winner, though, because it is. You love seeing competitiveness, especially in the Power 5 conferences, because you obviously want that. It kind of gets boring if there's a clear runaway and everybody else is kind of just fighting for second place. It's not a whole lot of interesting things going on. I will say this, and I kind of agree. I do think though, if Texas continues to win and playing how they are and playing good baseball, they'll for sure get a good seed and host. Also, simply because the infrastructure they have is perfect for it, and their history as well. But this Big 12 season kind of reminds me of what I was saying to you before we started recording was. Kind of reminds me of the AL and NL Central a lot of years where it's like, okay, these guys will get to the playoffs. Like obviously like the Twins or whoever it's going to be, it's going to get to the playoffs, but like the Yankees are going to beat them or, LSU is going to kick the shit out of them eventually. They're not real contenders when it comes to winning it, bringing home the hardware at the end of the day. They'll be in the playoffs. You'll see them, but I don't see them necessarily going to Omaha with any of these teams.
It's kind of like in the NFL for a couple of years when it was a division that was comprised of the Cowboys and the Giants. And I know the other teams. We don't have to go through them all because this is a D1 podcast, but that division was called the NFC, not East. It was called the NFC least for years. You go 8-8. Hey, you're winning that league, baby. Now there's another game, so maybe 9 wins will get you a division title. But that division has gotten a little bit better, but that's neither here nor there. That is my first winner, though, the Big 12. I think that it's just competitive. I like to see it because, honestly, it makes these Big 12 series harder to pick and more intriguing. From Texas, honestly, all the way down to Texas Tech in the standings, any of those teams could still win the conference this late in the season is pretty cool to see. Also, just another thing that shows how competitive the Big 12 is. Look at all the runs scored in the Texas Baylor. Look at all the runs scored in the 9th inning of those games. I mean, the conference is just unbelievable, and it's kind of cool to see. So I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's good. Second, I think you'll love my second one, Will. And my second winner of the day is the Pitt Panthers. They upset a top ACC opponent in Virginia, which is a massive because I think Virginia is one of the most under-talked about teams, underrated teams and that can be within the top 10. Obviously, you're not super underrated if you're a top 10 team, and they're at 8 right now with Virginia. But at the same time, Pitt now is 16-8 on the year with a 7-9 conference record. Pitt's not really having postseason aspirations, but that's a series when you can hang your hat on. And they won 2 close games early on with 7-5, 6-4, then they lost 5-8 on the Sunday. So they could not get the sweep. But I mean, they need prior to that, Will dropped a series to Notre Dame, which is a not great look. Not that Notre Dame is necessarily worse or better than Pitt. They're kind of even, but then you drop your two midweek games with you lose to Youngstown State and then Kent State. Although shout out to the Golden Flashes, they've been playing really good baseball lately. But those are 2 teams that you think you should beat when you're a Power 5 team, especially when you're an ACC baseball team.
Definitely. I think that when you look at, I think this just showed that in the ACC, it's Wake Forest and everybody else. I mean, is that fair to say? Like we just talked about the Big 12. I mean, and I know that's not fair to say because you have another top 10 team in the conference and you're a big Virginia guy. I get that. But when you do when you drop a series like that, like you think Wake is dropping a series to Pitt?
No,
I don't think so.
no.
No hate on Pitt. So, but it is, it's a week by week. It's a what have you done for me lately business. We could get on our high horse next week if somebody sweeps somebody else. So I get that, or gets a series. So, but yeah, the conversation goes back to there. But you're right. Virginia's a really good team. You wonder what they can do moving forward. But I do like that pick. I mean, when you upset a top 10 team, you're doing something right. You are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And here's my second winner. In
right.
a similar fashion that you did, Charlie, to your first winner. I'm picking a team as my winner for a team that I did not pick to win the series. So maybe we did that we didn't know who the winners were and losers were, but I kind of think we did that because we're like, damn, you guys got us. You got me. Coastal, you got me. I should have picked you guys, is the thought process behind that. But not only that, I think this is a huge win for Coastal. I still genuinely think ODU's offense is unbelievable. And I don't think anyone can argue that. I think what you can say is Coastal is honestly like legitimate team. Like they are very, very impressive. And there's a reason they're getting the respect and the rankings that they are right now. 23-11, and they're 11-4 in conference play. We're talking about the Sun Belt too, a team that sent a ton of teams to the NCAA tournament a year ago. But the week they had was pretty impressive. To split the midweek against Campbell, which ultimately gave them the series win over Campbell because they played 3 times on midweeks, and then against Old Dominion, who was receiving votes in some polls, to be able to beat the brakes off them in game 2 and then win game 3. That's so dang impressive for this Coastal pitching staff, especially to only allow 4 runs over the final 2 games. So that's where I'm tipping my cap to Coastal Carolina. Going in and doing that against ODU is not an easy task. I'll tell you that right now. And Coastal, I just tip my cap to them, Charlie. You look at their upcoming schedule.
It's hard.
College of Charleston, a team that's receiving votes on Wednesday. And, well, they play another ranked team in Southern Miss this weekend. Oh, you want it to get harder? Number 2 Wake Forest is on the docket next midweek. So, yeah, that RPI is going to look pretty for Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, and then also they play Louisiana the following week. I mean, like you said, like it's impressive when you get the series season win over Campbell. You get the series before that. You also get a series win over Georgia Southern. You sweep Georgia State, and then you also go and you get a series win against Texas State. So they've clearly beaten a lot of high quality opponents. They are kind of unique in the sense like it's unique, I guess, but the polls show it with them being top 10 in the D1 poll. It's the fact that Campbell always they always have a good midweek schedule given the fact that their conference isn't that strong. But for the non-power fives, I mean, and in their conference, Coastal's absolutely kicked the shit out of every single good team that's been in their conference so far that's playing good baseball. And on top of that, even if they do lose to the better opponent, like air quotes, a better opponent in the midweek, they're usually playing them really close. So they don't get blown out.
Yeah. And the Sun Belt level of play is so high. Like you even look at it for ODU, that game it came down to a rubber match that it went to extra innings. ODU lost in 10 innings, 4-2 in the rubber match. It was a good series. ODU takes game 1, Coastal blows them out game 2, and it goes to extras game 3. But you give credit to Coastal going to ODU and picking up the victory. That's a lot of credit to be able to beat ODU. But it's like ODU just came off the heels of a series loss against Southern Miss over the weekend. Last week, and after back-to-back series losses, ODU is still sitting at 9-6. So in conference play, so that Sun Belt standings is also very interesting as well. But they're definitely going to be sending teams to the. I think a couple of Sun Belt teams could honestly find themselves in supers. So it'll be pretty cool to see overall. But yeah, they're top 10 in the D1 poll. Coastal.
Yep,
that's great. So that's a winner for me, and it's a big series win. That's my second winner. Charlie Bornoff up to the plate now.
Speaking of big series wins, this is a team that will not be making any sort of postseason. They're not too great this year, but they can hang their hats on the fact that they upset number 15 Florida Gulf Coast over the weekend, and that would be the Eastern Kentucky University men's baseball team, or just baseball teams. There's only men's baseball anyways, but they're 15-29 on the year. But the thing I really want to highlight is the fact that it's a good series win for them, because before that you lose, you get the shit kicked out of you by Tennessee, but that's expected. And the weekend prior, though, when they're playing Jacksonville, they lost in heartbreaking fashion overall, simply because you lose in the first game, an 11-inning match. You lose by another run in the Saturday game, or Friday game, excuse me. And then on Saturday, then the rubber match, or not rubber match, just the last game, you do get the win, though, in 14 innings. So you played a lot of baseball this last weekend and some change. And you come out there and then you end up not only beating FGCU, but run ruin them in the first game of the series to make that statement. So hats off to them.
Yeah, really impressive, because FGCU, a team that was getting a lot of notoriety, that was in the D1 rankings for weeks.
Put them out of the top 25.
Yeah, deservingly so. I don't think if you're a top 25 team, you can't do that to that opponent.
Yeah, and especially when you're like, any kind of small school too, and you have to play lesser competition like that. I mean, those losses are magnified even more.
Yeah, you don't have margin for error. Unlike if you're, 5 games below 500 in the SEC, you might be top 10. You might still be a top 10 team. Like it's crazy, but that is one of the cool parts about that. And speaking of the SEC, I got through my first 3 winners, Charlie, without mentioning the SEC. My first winner, just to recap, was the Big 12. My second winner pertained to the Sun Belt Conference and Coastal. And my third winner is going to pertain to another league, specifically the Nebraska Cornhuskers. They're a winner for me because they're good. And I don't know if you looked at the Big Ten. I know last year we did a Big Ten preview, so we could have kind of looked back and see, how we did and what we looked like. Well, I don't know what we would have looked like for the Big Ten right now. I mean, overall, they've got a pretty good lineup right now in the Big Ten, a conference that's been disrespected kind of for a while. You have 6 teams with an above 500 in conference record in the Big Ten. And one of those teams that isn't in that category of above 500 in the Big Ten in conference play is Iowa, who's 25-9 overall and has been represented in the polls this year. So that shows you how competitive this league has been. But Nebraska is sitting at 21-11-1. They're 7-2 in conference play, atop of the Big Ten. And that's impressive, because when I look at this conference, you've got to put Nebraska in the NCAA tournament. You got to put Indiana in. Michigan State 23-10. They've got to get in. Maryland's got to get in. That's 4 teams I'm begging to get in the tournament. And Nebraska, they can really swing it now. That's why they're going to be a winner of mine. I know people are going to say, Will, they just swept Northwestern. What do you want them to do?
It's more a seasonal winner, though,
I get that, but they're going to be a winner for taking care of business and scoring 8 or more runs in all 3 of those games against Northwestern as well. They can really swing it. And I know they lost a midweek against Omaha in 10 innings, but their Big Ten action, they've strung together back-to-back Big Ten series wins. They've gotten Big Ten series wins all season long. And the Big Ten in general, just like the Big 12 in a more of a negative way, because the Big 12's kind of been down in the sense that everyone's beating up on each other. There's some pretty good teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And Nebraska at the top of that list, I think that could be a surprise to some, at least when you look at solely the conference record. So they're going to be a winner of mine. And that does it for my number 3 for the Cornhuskers, who have won 7 of their last 10 games.
Yeah, it's a great pick. I mean, to give you some numbers too, Nebraska's second in the Big Ten in batting average, only 1 point behind Michigan State. They're also second in home runs with only 3 behind to Maryland, and they're also first in slug. So you can make a good argument that they're the best hitting team in the Big Ten. And on top of that, they're second in team ERA on the year behind Iowa. And I mean, Nebraska's looked really good. Like, I do agree, like there's a lot of Big Ten teams that, at least if even they don't get in, they should really get talked about seriously about getting into the tournament. I think at least 3 of those teams probably will. Maryland, I think Indiana, Iowa, and Nebraska are looking really good right now. Maryland for sure is in that category as well, too.
Yeah.
But, we'll see. But Big Ten definitely looks a lot better than it did last year.
Definitely they do. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you go back and look at the 2022 standings.
Michigan State was terrible last year.
Yeah, it was Maryland. Great. It was Maryland who was 47-14.
Yeah.
and 18-5. Obviously, they got in. They were really good. Who was the second team in the Big Ten last year? It was Rutgers, who was
Yep.
17-7 in Big Ten play and 44-15 overall and didn't get in.
Yeah.
Now, and they were second with 44 wins. And now, and I thought that was a crime. I honestly did. And now you look at it now, it's like Nebraska 21 wins, Indiana 25, Michigan State 23. I mean, Iowa's got 25. It's
Yeah.
just, this is a really fun conference. And you kind of could put the Power Five back in it with the Big Ten. Now, will they compete in the postseason at the same level? We don't know, but why would we speculate that and not just put them in and see what happens? Because I think there's a Big Ten team that sometimes can make a run,
Yeah.
an Indiana, an Iowa. So I just want to see that. And I think that that's why they're one of my winners. Now, do we move on to the L's?
Absolutely.
All right. Who's holding the L for you first?
We talked about them a little bit already because EKU is my winner, but the loser is FGCU. They went 1-3 on the week and they've now dropped out of the top 25 in almost all rankings pretty much. And the real loss too is they're just a much better team than Eastern Kentucky. And like we said before, when you're in the weaker conference like FGCU is and you drop a series like this, it's magnified and the consequences are much greater than they would be if it's a Power Five. Like Tennessee finally just dropped out of the top 25 and they had lost multiple series to obviously very good opponents, but the point still stands. So FGCU's out of there. It hurts their chances a little bit of getting into the tournament. I still think they have a good shot at it, but makes the journey a little bit harder.
That's a really good point. And I think something else that maybe flew under the radar, like I think it's fair to say Virginia's a loser this week in the same
Absolutely.
respect that I'm going to say Stanford is a loser this week. Now, all their games this week, all 5 of them this past week were against ranked opponents. Number 21, Texas Tech, they went 1-1. And then number 25, Oregon, where they went 1-2. So they split versus Texas Tech at home and then lost the series at Oregon. Now I feel like that kind of flies under the radar. Like, should we be giving Oregon more credit? Should we be speculating more about Stanford? Because Stanford didn't really move much in the rankings. And ultimately, they came out with a 3-loss week, including midweek. So they're a loser for me in that sense. They got shut out in game 1 against Oregon. They lost 8-1 in game 2, and then they won by 2 runs in just to salvage a game in the 3-game set at number 25 Oregon. So the Stanford, man, they're a loser for me because I feel like they've been held to such a high standard. And when they do lose a series like this, they're also given that luxury of like, okay, you guys are Stanford, you'll be fine, kind of like Virginia. But that they're a loser for me this week because of that.
Yeah, it's fair. I think to answer your question about why they might not have dropped as much, I think it's kind of the same point that I was making about FGCU dropping so much is the fact that, like, obviously you're at number 9. You should be more competitive in some of those games against teams that are ranked lower than you. But the fact that, it's in conference matchup with Oregon and it's at Oregon makes it a little tougher and makes it more understandable why they would lose, but definitely is a very much deserving loser for the week.
It is. And if you want to know, like, I like how we bring it back to the conference, at least from a whole, when we bring it back to that, like, you wonder what the Pac-12 is going to look like now at the end of the season because Stanford's got a tough road ahead.
Yeah.
They've got a 3-game set against Washington. Then they got a 3-game set against UCLA, who can really throw the ball as well as anybody in that league. Then they travel to an Arizona State school who has really performed better than most have expected this year. So those are their next 3 series. I kind of wonder if things will get shaken up. I mean, Arizona State currently is in first place in the Pac-12, 11-3, Stanford 11-4, and then UCLA 8-5, and Stanford has to play 2 of those 3 teams that are first and third, with them being second in the next 3 weeks. So that'll be interesting for sure, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it should be good. Pac-12's got some really good teams this year. Like you said, the UCLA Stanford matchup should be pretty good. I'm not too worried about Stanford overall in this. I think it's if there was something as a good series loss, this is one of them.
Yeah, no, it is. But now that when I look ahead, I mean that's coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll definitely have to have that on our pick'em, coming up next week.
For
I
sure.
don't know. I might pick UCLA. I don't
Yeah, it's
know.
not a bad pick.
That's hey, we got time. We got time. So
All right.
now, next loser for you, Charlie. I know you're jumping at the gun.
The Oklahoma State Cowboys. They dropped a series against West Virginia at home, so that makes it even worse, dropping the first two 3-6, 5-9. Then they did win on Sunday, 11-6, but they also will dropped their midweek against a very good and offensively talented Oral Roberts team, but team that certainly Oklahoma State thinks and expects to take care of anytime they kind of team to play like that. So it hurts them because of that, and then also the fact that they dropped the previous series as well against TCU. So I mean, they've gone back-to-back weeks now of losing in conference series. They're not looking as good as maybe we thought they would in the preseason, but this kind of goes along with what you said. That it's kind of a rock fight right now in the Big 12, where yes, teams are really competitive, but it's kind of showing that are any of these teams great? You know, these teams don't really give me a strong Omaha field this year.
Yeah.
Even with a guy like Jerron Watts Brown, like I mean, he's great and he's so fun to watch, and that team's good. But you expect a little more out of the Cowboys in a season like this.
You do. And it feels like they struggle to win the big games. You know, that's kind of the target on their back right now,
Yeah.
right? The
They have
big series.
I will say that they have a very favorable schedule going forward. They play Oklahoma today, as we're recording this on Tuesday, but then their next series are at Kansas, then you go at Michigan, then you go versus East Tennessee State. Then you finish your last two series of the year with Kansas State and Oklahoma. So those are ones they should win. They could win, but
yeah,
you never know.
it's like Kansas State will probably be the toughest opponent on the
Yeah.
schedule remaining, you would think.
I would think
they're
so.
toward the top. So that'd be interesting. Now, Charlie, if we transition and continue with our losers, I ask you a question. I mean, we are both pitchers. So, you know, what do you do? Bases loaded, 2 outs in the 8th in a 2-run game. You K a guy. What's your reaction?
I'm gonna showboat a little bit, you know. Gotta get the juices flowing, get the fans hyped, get the boys hyped. You gotta get everybody in the whole stadium feeling the electricity.
Yeah. And that's what, you know, the Gators back end guy, Brandon Neely, did.
Yeah.
But guess what else happened to him?
He got
See ya, baby.
see you later, ejected.
He got ejected. I mean, this dude, okay, so just as a situation as I just stated, it was, and I hate because this is the second time this year we've talked about an umpire, and umpires have an incredibly difficult job. It's even more difficult this year with keeping track of the times guys are getting in the box and the pitch clocks and everything, and they're always scrutinized by thousands of screaming fans at them. But you throw a guy out, I think everybody flexes. You know, our good buddy, you know, Riley Martin, when he had, you know, 1,000 strikeouts, he waved every single batter. He probably he wouldn't have. He had 12 starts, so he only had 12 strikeouts the whole year. If they had these rules,
Yeah,
he would have been ejected after every time.
Yeah,
and so Neely gets a strikeout with bases loaded, 2 outs in the 8th in a 2-run game. So we're talking about tying run and scoring position, folks. And he screams. He's hyped. And the umpire ejects him for screaming at the dugout after an inning strikeout. And what happened next, I'm going to talk about a little bit in my weekend rotation. But I don't know. Like, I think you're allowed to scream, especially in that scenario. And that's why him getting ejected is a loser for me. I don't know if people saw the video, but you should make your own opinion about it. I think certain things maybe could warrant an ejection. Like if you maybe put both of these fingers, if you put both your fingers up, maybe like derogatorily say something to them, like where everyone can hear it. He was like just screaming like, let's go. I don't know. So that's why I'm a little upset with that one.
Yeah, as you should be. Neely, I think, handled it well, though. He didn't seem to freak out too much. Well, you mentioned a ump's job is hard. What's not hard, though, is to let kids have fun. It's not like he was showing anybody up, and even if he was, like, I'm in the boat of, like, who really cares unless he takes it really far and he goes really overboard. Like, I have no problem with people chirping. Like, you should let it happen. It makes the game more fun. It's gamesmanship. It's part of the entertainment. It's part of being a competitor. And like you said, it'd be also like I would understand more if it was like the first inning and he was like, just acting like it was Game 7 of the World Series. But this was a big moment in a really big game in a good series, so it's totally understandable why he would react that way. And for him to do that, it kills the vibe. You know, I mean, he needs to calm down. Will you speak of ejections? Maybe he needs to eject something out of his own body to calm down a little.
Yeah, it was really tough. And obviously what happened next was pretty cool too. I'm going to talk about that in my weekend rotation, but yeah, to be ejected in that scenario is tough. And it goes back to what the NCAA did at the beginning of the year. Like, I know one of the big talking points was the action clock, which I love. I think it's created a new interest in baseball. In the MLB, certainly they changed up the rules, and it's even at the college level. They have the rules. You know, you can't fake pick only once per batter. The clock. Let's get the game moving. Let's do it. And they've kind of, as Jim Edmonds said it on Bally Sports Midwest, cut the fat out of the game. You know, they trimmed it down. And it's great. It's energetic. It's exciting. But one of the things they also did this year, there's no props outside the dugout for celebrations, and they want to crack down on the taunting and the celebrating. That was one of the other big points of emphasis of rule change, along with the action clock, that maybe got swept under the rug in terms of big changes happening this year. And you're seeing that, you know, guys are getting punished for this, but now I've seen plenty of guys do what he does and not get ejected. So that's why I just think it's a little bit questionable. But enough time on that. Let's go to your next loser.
My next loser is Abilene Christian. They did drop their series to in-conference opponent Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon's a good squad. You know, Jacob Wilson's one of the best players in the country. A similar reason why I have them on here is same way with Oklahoma State, where they lost it, but they also lost the previous series against Sam Houston State. Those are both really big teams to play against in their conference. It's understandable how they could lose those, but, you know, it's just tough. You really want to get those kind of wins out of the way and something you hang your hat on to help build that resume towards getting into the playoffs, because Abilene Christian's kind of that boat where it's a little hard because you're not in a power conference of any kind, so every win does count, and having two series back-to-back losses against arguably better opponents, you know, some people's eyes, does not help their case.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm with you. ACU shout out to Demko.
Yep.
All right. How about next one? I'm going with the Horned Frogs for my next loser. They host a team, UNC, not UNC Tar Heels, new UNC Wilmington. Charlie, what did they do? They lost 2 of 3. And they gave up 14 runs in game 1 and 12 runs in game 3. Red flag. That is a red flag for me, Charlie. I mean, and this came off the heels of beating Oklahoma State the week before. So, yeah, UNC Wilmington, great series win for them on the road at TCU. But TCU, that's a big yikes. It is a big yikes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much a 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of deal. Because, I mean, Oklahoma State, even though they have been struggling a little bit of late, they're still a good team. They've got a lot of talent. And the other real issue, like, well, the yikes to me comes from the fact that they got their teeth kicked in their 2 losses as well. None of the games in the series were particularly close, with their 2 losses being 14-6 and 12-6.
Yeah, no, it was really rough.
And it was at home, too. Like, how do you let that happen?
Yeah, you step out of conference play, you think you're just going to add 3 wins for the RPI. And that's the thing, like people are obsessed about the RPI. Like, you got to play good teams. You got to play good teams on the road. That's what UNC Wilmington was trying to do. They did that and got the job done. TCU maybe thought they were going to get the brooms out, and they didn't. And then my other loser, Charlie, combined with them, probably an equal disappointment, is just this NC State doing things to Florida State. This weekend, 14-3 in game 1, Seminoles drop. Then they drop games 2 and 3 by a combined 2 runs, 1 run in each game. And you look up, and Florida State is 13-22.
Yeah.
Maybe he wasn't left in a great position after the last regime with Martin, but Link Jarrett is struggling badly in his first season at Florida State. But I think he's a great coach. You saw what he did at Notre Dame. He is struggling mightily, though, this year. They've piled up losses, and you wonder if they're going to figure this out. Time, I think, is run out. They've lost 6 consecutive games. They're 13-22, and that long streak of regionals is going to come to a screeching halt. That is for sure.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, too, because they're tied right now with Miami for the all-time record. I will say this. If we're not going to – if similar like with this, take it really far back. When Michigan won the national championship with Steve Fisher, okay, their head coach had quit, took another job prior to the start of the tournament. So Steve Fisher does have a national championship ring on his hand, but people criticize him for the fact that, that's not really your team, okay? Like, that's not your team that truly won. Like, you deserve some of the win for that because you did lead them all the way. Similar with Link Jarrett, though. If you're an FSU fan listening, this whole thing is not totally Link Jarrett's fault. This is not his own team that he recruited and brought in. This is not his roster of guys, but he still does deserve some blame for it. The simple fact is more talented than what you said, 13 and 23.
So yeah, 13-22.
Yeah, 13 and 22. FSU is a lot better than that. That's an unacceptable thing for a program of that pedigree and status. So this is for sure a lost season, but I'm not worried long term. Link Jarrett's a hell of a coach, like you said. He built Notre Dame up, and I think he'll do the same thing at FSU with even more resources.
Yeah, I mean, for FSU, it's historically bad. I mean, it's one of the worst seasons they've had in half a century. When you
Yeah,
talk about what the 44 straight NCAA tournament, like,
yeah,
and it's just hard. Like, especially when you looked at their rotation, you thought they had something there with Baumeister and Montgomery, and I don't know, man. It's just it's a bad season. That's what you can chalk it up as, but they continue to lose. So I'm probably going to not have them in my losers the rest of the year because I think I've had them too much. I don't want to kick them while they're down because they're having a tough go and tough seasons happen. But it's year one and it's a story that you
yeah,
continue because it was so crazy to see that streak, but those streaks will come to an end. You know, Jordan Walker hit 12 straight. It ended. Ray's streak ended. There was a streak of 56 games. It ended at one point, and this one will come to an end. It was historic. It was record breaking. You should celebrate the fact that it happened if you're a Seminole fan listening. And I think there's brighter days in the future because it certainly will not get worse for a program of that pedigree. That's for sure.
hopefully they'll finally get a championship one of these years.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If he gets a championship,
All's
I mean,
forgiven.
they would want a championship more than 44 more straight years of just making it. I guarantee
Yeah,
you that.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
so that's for sure. So let's move it on to the old Chuck E. Cheese weekend rotation, Dave. Who cracked your who's your Friday night guy?
I'm gonna butcher his name for sure, so I apologize in advance. I'm going with the Cowboy, Cal boy, Cade Kretschmar. Schmar. I totally messed it up. That's okay. That could be an L right there, Will, the way I pronounced his last name. But what Cade did though on the weekend was fantastic against Utah as the Cal Golden Bear went 15 of 21 with 3 doubles, 2 homers, 10 RBIs, and a 754 WOBA over the weekend. On the year though, Will, 319 average, 8 homers, and oh my god, I can't read. A 969 OPS. So he's been having a great year all year, and he's absolutely balled out this weekend. So he gets my Friday start.
Where'd you get the WOBA from?
D1 baseball has it now.
Wow,
Shout
weighted
out to D1.
on base average. They're
We
doing
know we
things
know
that
who
are
loves that. Shout out to Robert
yes.
Fry.
Well, yes, they're doing things that our buddy Robert Fry on the college baseball website, he does incredible work. Like
He
he
does.
started a site this year, the first ever of its kind that had all college baseball stats. I know we're a Division I baseball podcast. He had 1, 2, 3 NAIA JUCO on there. Like the dude is a monster. You want a stat, you go to him. But when you said WOBA, I didn't listen to anything else. But again, he went 15 for 21. I should have listened to that.
Yeah.
My God. So he had a week, that's for sure. For me, Charlie, my weekend rotation first guy goes to Jack Caglione. I think he's been on this a lot, Charlie. You might sigh, but
no sigh.
I don't think you need to sigh. He is going to break Melendez's record that was set last year for home runs. He leads the NCAA in homers. What else does he do? Throw 97, 98, 99 on the mound. And he hit a grand slam after his good buddy was ejected, Brandon Neely, and just didn't celebrate at all after a big-time grand slam because he has that dog in him to say, I guess I won't celebrate at all, buddy. And it was like the quietest grand slam celebration of all time. But that might get swept under the rug of the fact that Jack Caglione is having one of the more historic seasons in college baseball history right now. You look at what he's done, and I mean, you have to kind of see this coming. The young kid out of Tampa, Florida, who is just a sophomore. And you look last year, he was SEC All Tournament. He was Gainesville All Regional. And he started to really play a lot toward the end of the year. But coming out of high school, he was the number 4 left-handed pitcher and number 1 first baseman. So they knew he could do both. He was highly rated as both. He was the two-way player of the year out of high school. And he's doing the same stuff here at the collegiate level, just hitting so many home runs. Charlie, and he's just doing a lot of fun things. He went 5 innings also on the mound, 2 earned over the weekend. But what he really did well was he hit 2 bombs in that series finale to pick up. It was a rubber match against Georgia. Georgia took game 1. He hit 2 bombs in the series finale. His total now is up to 21. So this dude, realistically, he's hitting 30 plus. I mean, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
no, it's fair. And it's obviously we're not even done with the season yet, but he has to be the odds-on preseason favorite for next year to be the Golden Spikes winner.
Yeah. And I think he's going to get to what Melendez had 32 last year. I think he's going to break that. I think he's
Something
going to
in the
break.
water nowadays, man. Something in the water in this college baseball world. Dudes are
Well,
just getting better and better.
well, speaking of the record breaking, I know where you're going to get mad because I'm going to go off D1, but our alma mater is on pace to set the all-time D2 home run record as a team right now.
Hey, that's
So
what we do. Quincy Rex, baby, go Hawks.
yeah, they're hitting like 2.6 per game. The all-time record's 2.4. So it's pretty crazy. But yeah, and they've got a buddy on their team with 21 homers as well. So they might hit the most in all of college baseball, D1, D2, or D3. But yeah, I mean, Jack Caglione, 2 bombs in the series finale, rubber match, got the grand slam. He's my weekend guy. He's going to be on it a lot. And yeah, you're right. National Player of the Year pick for next year, probably 1-1 as well, you would think.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, he's definitely up there. If he's not 1-1, he's top 5 for sure. So my Saturday guy will. We're gonna go away from the bats though. We're gonna go to UPenn in the Ivy League. Ryan Drombowski of Penn against Brown in the sweep of Brown this weekend went 9 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 run, no walks, 12 Ks. One of the best performances of the year, in my opinion. Absolutely balled out. Penn's now, I think, 20-11 on the year, so watch out for them. One of the best teams in the Ivy League and one of the better pitchers in the Ivy League as well.
Yeah. Just absolute dog.
And I'll say, and on my bad, can I interrupt too? Because I always forget to do this. On the year, Will, to back up my claim of him being one of the best in the Ivy League, 2.44 ERA, a 1.08 whip, 65 Ks to 20 walks in 44 and a third innings pitched. He's doing something right, man.
He's doing a lot of things right. That's for sure. That's for sure. And how about this, Charlie? My next weekend rotation is when Ole Miss plays at Mississippi State. Charlie, we've got to get down to next time that happens. The most electric thing I've seen all year between anything in any team, it really in anything I've seen in all of college baseball was what happened at Mississippi State this weekend. It was one of the most electric things actually of all time statistically as well. In the series, just to give you a brief recap, Ole Miss took game 1 3-2. So that goes down as a banger. And then in game 2, 8-7, Mississippi State is able to get the win, a walk-off in the bottom of the 9th. They scored 2. And then in game 3, it is a 5-3 win for Mississippi State. They score 2 late runs again in the bottom of the 7th and ultimately take the series at home. Don't look now, but Mississippi State has won a couple of consecutive series and starting to figure things out in the SEC. But my winner out of that, saw this from NCAA.com, Mississippi State and Ole Miss broke the college baseball all-time attendance record over the weekend as well. 2 last place teams meeting in the SEC, but the game matters when Mississippi State is playing Ole Miss. It's a rivalry, and a record-setting 16,423 were in attendance, most of all time. And man, the walk-off, like the seeing videos of that walk-off, oh my God. Like that was just, it was the loudest I've ever seen anything. And it was a massive series. All the games were close, and why not do it when you have literally the most people ever at a college baseball game and you get a walk-off on top of that? That's a Mississippi State's a winner in its own right, but my rotation goes to all 16,000 human beings plus that help set that record and make that atmosphere just electric. You got to go look at that Dakota Jordan walk-off on Mississippi State baseball, Hail State baseball Twitter. Man, that was sick.
Yeah, and I think that highlights why college sports are so fun. Because, like you said, they're kind of bottom of the conference in the SEC. both have plenty of talent on those teams though, because it's like hard to say. You have
Last.
guys like Jacob Gonzalez and Hunter Hines playing in that, so it's a little different. But at the same time, the fact that you would never get that. Like, if this is essentially the Detroit Tigers versus the Kansas City Royals in terms of like win production so far. You would never get that kind of attendance turnout for a game like that. But even with both teams underperforming and their break the record, shows you how much that baseball means in that state and means the SEC and how much it means in college baseball as well.
It's crazy.
So hats off to them, man.
You would have thought it would have been 1-2 or something.
Yeah, you would have thought it was the College World Series.
Yeah, no, it's 2 last place teams. That's awesome. It really is. And the series was actually absolutely electric. It really was. So good stuff. How about you as we move on to your third guy on your weekend?
I'm going to go with my Sunday guy. We're going to go to Central Michigan. We're going to go with Adam Merkidish. I also butchered that one. I chose some really challenging names this year.
Yeah, you did.
Today, I'm not going to lie, but that's okay. 9 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 run, 0 walks, 10 Ks against Ball State over the weekend. He's now on the year, 3.77 ERA, which isn't great, but what's really impressive for a college pitcher is when you have a whip below 1, is what he has with a .99 whip. 51 strikeouts to 18 walks over 57 in a third innings pitched. That's not only a tremendous whip, a tremendous game, but also a tremendous strikeout to walk ratio.
Yeah, that's really good. They're striking guys out and not walking them. Man, that's what you want to do in life. That is what you want to do in life. Pretty cool stuff. Now we move along to my weekend rotation. And it's guys been a part of it as well. I'm going with the movie stars this weekend, and you're going with guys that should be talked about with their stuff. I said Jack.
I got the foreign films, you know.
Yeah, I had the Cags. I had the Mississippi State all-time attendance record. Now
blockbusters.
I have a Tommy White movie star. Well, he had a pretty good week, and I think maybe we talk and we want to have more conversation about, LSU loses a game. Well, yeah, they're playing the number 1 RPI team in Kentucky, and Tommy White led LSU to 3 wins in 4 games last week. They're the number 1 team in the nation, taking on the number 1 RPI team, and he went 7 for 18 in 4 games with 4 doubles, a homer, 11 RBI, 4 runs, and he ultimately is my weekend rotation guy.
That's a great pick. Tommy White, I mean, deserving most weekends, to be honest, the way he plays. Is this probably the second or third time that on the year I think we've talked about it. We haven't really talked as much about him, considering the fact that somehow Tommy White's overshadowed not only by one guy in Dylan Cruz, but 2 guys with Paul Skeens as well.
Yeah. Paul Skeens kind of got hit over the weekend. That was kind of crazy.
A little crack in the armor, maybe. Never know.
Yeah, you do never know. He's unbelievable though. That's a crazy thing. That series too, man. That Kentucky series was sick. Like that. Yeah. Those game 2 and 3 was so good. 13-10, game 2, Kentucky wins, and then 7-6 LSU salvages. Not even salvages, just takes a series on the rubber match. I mean, that was awesome. That just showed you how good Kentucky is, I think. But yeah, overall, Tommy White getting the job done.
Is Mingione, is he going to be coach of the year with just how good Kentucky's been and how much of a surprise they were? Because, I mean, they weren't on my radar. I know they weren't on yours, and they weren't on a whole lot of people's.
Yeah, I think
he's got to at least be considered. He's got to be a finalist, in my opinion.
I think you bring up a great conversation. I think it's got to be either him. I mean, I would like Tom Walter, he at Wake Forest, you talk about, he's going on his 13th, 14th year there. And it's based on regular season success, isn't it? They do the voting before it's done, or you would always just give it to the national champion. That's always the case. But, he's in there. But they were also top 10 preseason. Kentucky wasn't ranked, so Kentucky probably has a better case.
You could also say Mark Kingston, too, at South Carolina, because they've by far exceeded. But Justin Hare is also a good argument. I'm totally blanking on Coastal's head coach name, but he's also in that category as well.
Yeah. No, that's a really good. But we can't blank on his name. We got to get his name that you absolutely said it. And I'm going to find it.
It's bad journalism on our part.
No, it's not. It's not even journalism. I think he's probably one of the longest standing legends in college baseball history right now. Gary Gilmore, 1,293 wins in 33 seasons as a head coach,
and a national championship,
and a national title in 2016. And he has literally over 1,300 wins in 3+ decades.
That's a baseball lifer right there.
He is. He is honestly incredible. I listened to him in a podcast a handful of weeks back, and he is just awesome to hear.
Nice.
Here
We should get him on the pod.
we should get him. He's incredible. So if you guys know Gary, hit us up. So now we move along to our series picks, Charlie.
Yep. Shall I start?
Well, before you start, do you want to reconcile just at least our records where we were tied last
I
week?
got you. No, we weren't tied last week. I was a little bit so
No,
nothing
not
changed.
overall.
Oh,
Not overall.
okay, yeah, I got you. Yeah. So good weeks for both of us. Actually, we did the exact same thing as last week. We went 3-1-1. We both got the Wake Forest series right over Louisville. We tied the Arizona State Washington because that was a split series because the last game was canceled. I got Coastal Carolina over Old Dominion right. You got that wrong. You got Vanderbilt versus South Carolina right with Vandy winning. I got South Carolina, and then I'm sorry, you had two. I totally did that wrong. You have two losses. I'm tweaking because you chose FAU. I had DBU in that, and so you went 2-2-1. I went 3-1-1. So that's what it is. I'm gonna recalculate that again. That's gonna be annoying. But yeah, still not a bad weekend overall. I mean, acceptable losses from both sides. Good series of games to pick from. And I think we got another good setup this week too.
I mean, all of them had damn rubber matches. Like those were damn good series. So we're got to be a winner for picking good series to pick. But now let's pick them, Charlie. Overall, you have a couple game lead if memory serves. So we can get to that later. But it is a couple game lead. I know that.
Yeah.
So another again big week. Let's hear it.
All right, first one, a SWAC face-off top two. One of these teams will be representing the one bid SWAC. Both are very good teams, and this is a really hard one for me to go through. But Alabama State versus Bethune-Cookman. This one's a tug at the heartstrings for me because I have Alabama State in my small schools draft from this year. But we also had the great Johnny Hernandez on here as the head coach of Bethune-Cookman on the podcast. If you've never listened to that interview, please go do it. It's a great one of my favorites we've ever done. With that being said, Coach Hernandez, I'm sorry, I am going with Alabama State. I think they have a slight edge, mainly because they're at home, which is helpful, but I think there's just maybe some things that'll break their way. With that being said, though, Will, do you want to go and give your pick, and then I do my players to watch? Do you want me to do players to watch, then you pick?
Yeah, I'll give my pick first. We can go back and forth with the given who gives it first. I'm ultimately going to go with Mr. Hernandez and Bethune-Cookman to take 2 of 3 on the road. Like as much of the things that you echoed, these are the top 2 teams in the SWAC. I think that's obviously pretty clear cut right now with Bethune-Cookman and Alabama State. The crazy thing is, like, they're both in the East Division of the SWAC. So, and the crazy thing is, Charlie, it's really a top-heavy league. Like, in the sense of Bethune-Cookman, Alabama State, Florida A&M, Grambling State, and Prairie View A&M are all 10-plus wins in conference. And then you've got, a bunch of 2-13s, 2-12s. But I think consensus-wise, these two are the best 2 teams in the league. There's no argument about that, I don't think. And I'm ultimately going to go with Bethune-Cookman. They've been pitching the ball really well this year. And I think that's going to continue. Now, Alabama State kind of scares me, Charlie, because I looked at their team batting average, and they're hitting 323 as a team.
Yeah, they can rake.
And they have the best ERA in the SWAC, which is a 4.65. That's, hey, Johnny told us it's a hitting league. It certainly is. But Bethune-Cookman's not too far behind. They're second in team ERA. And I think they're just going to somehow find a way to close it out. They're coming off the heels of being in the NCBWA top 25 receiving votes. So that's like a program that hasn't seen that since 2017, I believe. So that gives them some boost to go take it. And I'm going to rock with Johnny Hernandez on this one.
That should be a really fun series, people. If you like some small school baseball, please go watch that one. Show the SWAC some love, give the HBU some love. There's a lot of good players in there. And speaking of players in this series, Will, got some players to watch in this, okay? One for each. I'm going to start with Alabama State. You mentioned they have the team best ERA in the league. And one of their best pitchers, one of their aces, Omar Melendez, 2.21 ERA, a 1.07 whip, 57 innings pitched, 57 strikeouts, and only 17 walks on the year. Look out for him. That should be a great, fantastic pitching matchup for him. And on the other side, so the battle between Omar Melendez will be with Highland Hall, arguably the best pitcher on Bethune-Cookman, 364 average, a 1,027 OPS, 4 homers and 30 RBIs. 2 really talented teams, and these are two of the guys who might be leading the teams to victories this weekend.
Yeah, 2 great picks for you. So you're going to go with?
I'm going with Alabama State, and you're going with Bethune Cookman.
There we go.
And now another tricky one, Will, coming up next. Number 24, Southern Miss. At number 10, Coastal Carolina. Who are you going to pick first?
I'm going with Coastal. It's
Okay.
hard to argue with what they did and
Yeah.
what they've done. Southern Miss, those coming. They are pitching and they're on the rise, and they are who people thought they were when they were preseason top 25.
Yep.
And this is why this is going to be an ultimate battle. I love this conference. It's a hard one, but Coastal, their resume is so impressive, and it's just hard to pick against them at this point, especially after what they did last week. And I'm gonna love all over this top 25 battle. I'm going with Coastal though.
Yeah.
It's gonna be tough though. I want to hear what you have to say now.
This should be a banger. We have not mentioned the name of Tanner Hall once this year, because he's kind of having a very, very, very heavy air quotes down year with only a 2.29 ERA this year. Hall's still been fantastic this year, but I also am going to go with Coastal. I just think they have more firepower. The fact that, like you said, their resume is so impressive is just eye-opening to me. And I'm just not going to bet against them right now. And speaking of that, though, we got two more players I want to talk about in this series, Will, some players to watch. A guy that I've really liked for Southern Miss, and I've talked about him a couple times, and that's Slade Wilkes. 344 average, a 1,200 OPS, 14 homers, 39 RBIs. He's one of the catalysts for this offense. You could argue the best bat at Southern Miss right now, and definitely gets the things going for the Golden Eagles. And then on the other side of the Coastal, in the Chanticleers, we got Derek Bender, 356 average, 1,100 OPS, 11 homers, 50 RBIs for one of the best offenses in the league, let alone their conference. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of balls going out this weekend.
That is a fact. That'll be a fun series. I can't wait.
Yeah.
That's probably the one I'm looking forward to the most. Number 24, Southern Miss, and number 10, Coastal. That'll be really, really fun. So we both go with Coastal. Now we move along to another ranked battle.
The best matchup in the Pac-12 this weekend, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 4 of our 5 picks are top 25 teams versus top 25 teams. So
yeah, and really not top 25 is the top 2 in the conference.
Yeah, and it's the swag. So we got bangers this week. And this one, Charlie, Oregon State at number 19, ASU.
Yes, sir. I'll go first. I think this will be a close one. This is probably the one I was most, unsure about in my picking this weekend. I think it's just I haven't got to see them as much as the other schools we've talked about in this series picks. But I am going to go with Oregon State. They've won 8 in a row now. They're hot. One of the biggest guys on this team, and I'll just go through my players to watch right now because I want to talk about him, considering the amount of strikeouts he has for his innings pitch is laughable. And like if he's on, like you're not putting the ball in play, and it's gonna be real trouble for ASU. It's a very talented hitting team though. But Trent Sellers at Oregon State, 3.71 ERA, a 1.37 WHIP, 43 and 2/3 innings pitched. Will he's got 19 walks though, but he's had 74 strikeouts in that 43 and 2/3 innings pitch. So that man absolutely has some nasty stuff. He obviously knows how to pitch, knows how to strike you out. And I'm very excited for his matchup against ASU's arguably best hitter in Ryan Campos. He's hitting a very, quiet 4.13 on the year with a 1,184 OPS, 7 homers and 21 RBIs. And I noticed when I was looking at the stats for Arizona State this year, there's not exactly like one pure heavy thumper on the team. There's a lot of like 3 or 4 guys that you can send the ball out about the same rate. So it's really more of a group collection than it is one guy doing all the offense for them, which is something you like to see in a good team.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I am going to go with Oregon State. I think that the opponent they're going up against this weekend is good, but when you just brought up that they don't have all that thump, who does have thump is Oregon State on the pitching side of things. Yeah. I think this is truly one of the best pitching staffs in the country that's represented with their team ERA of 3.14. That's second best in the country right now. And they've got some just dogs out of the bullpen. What Ryan Brown has done this year out of the pen, 14 appearances and a 0.49 ERA.
That plays.
He's been great. I mean, they've got multiple guys out of the bullpen with a lot. AJ Hutchinson has 15 appearances with a 0.92 ERA. Their bullpen is truly great. And especially Brown with the 7 saves at the back end. I mean, he isn't giving an inch, and he's 3-0 with a 0.6 ERA, 0.49 ERA. He needs to be talked about as reliever of the year type. But overall, this Oregon State team, a 3.14 team ERA, I think they're just going to pitch themselves to victory in this series against an ASU team that's proven to be scrappy. They've played well as of late, and they're the 19th ranked team in the country hosting a school like Arizona State. I think Arizona State's going to go in, ride this 8-game win streak, and go pick up some much needed, some massive victories on their own. This really would be massive if they were able to get this series ultimately to go in their favor, just because of how the conference has looked so far. But the travel to Phoenix, Arizona and get 2 of 3 would really continue to shake things up at the top of the Pac-12 standings. And I think that's what will happen. I'm going to go with Oregon State and their elite pitching staff.
Yeah, it should be a really fun one. I agree that really would shake things up a lot. Another really good matchup, though, and this won't shake things up as much given the fact that Virginia and Wake Forest have been so dominant this year, but certainly a great matchup nonetheless. That is number 20 Boston College and number 18 UNC. Will, I'm taking the Tar Heels in this one, or I should say the Diamond Heels. I just think I think they're a little bit more talented. Boston College, they've been very good this year, obviously, but for some reason I've not really bought into the Golden Eagles this year, so I'm gonna stick with the Tar Heels in this one. What about you?
I'm sticking with the Tar Heels as well. I bought into the Golden Eagles. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they've been good. I think the Tar Heels at home, I think they're going to get the job done, especially when you look at, what they're coming off of. And they have so much talent. Like we've liked their team. I think obviously Boston College does as well. They're both two pretty quality programs in the ACC this year. But I think that you're looking for a response from really both of these teams. I think it'd be a massive series win for either team. That's why we're talking about a top 25 battle and we're picking it. But in Chapel Hill, I think UNT is going to pull out all the stops to get this one, because I think they feel like they played just as well as Miami this past weekend. Yeah. They won in 11 innings in game 2 and then lost games 1 and 3 by 1 run each. So they nearly had Miami, couldn't get it done at home. I don't think they're going to drop a second consecutive series at home, and I'm going to go with UNC.
Yeah, I agree. And some players to watch in that one. Boston College has Barry Walsh, one of the better bats in the ACC, hitting .351 and .894 OPS, 3 homers, 23 RBIs. But a guy on the UNC side, we all know about the great generational talent that Vance Honeycutt is, but someone that we don't talk about enough, and a guy that I like a lot, is Mac Horvath. 271 average, 1,042 OPS, 13 homers, which I believe is the leader right now for UNC, if I'm not mistaken. If not, he's like number 2, and then 35 RBIs. I think one of the under talked about guys in the ACC and college baseball in general.
Yeah, no, I agree. He rakes. He's been raking.
Man can hoop.
Yes, he definitely can, and that'll be a good one too. So we've picked 3 of the same: Coastal, Oregon State, and UNC, and now we move along to our final series, Charlie.
Yeah, our buns are the ones that are different, if we're calling this a sandwich, with the 3 in the middle being the burger. And the last one, well, I would say it's the people's pick this weekend, because it's just such a good series. That's number 6 South Carolina versus number 3 Florida. Will, I think this one could go either way. I'm taking South Carolina, though, because I do think their pitching will prevail in this, given the fact that, Florida's pitching staff might be a little more talented on the raw side. They struggle to put together at times, so I'm banking on South Carolina's pitching to be more consistent with Mahoney and Hall, and then even maybe hopefully Will Sanders gets another good outing out of there. And when you have guys like Gavin Costas and Ethan Petrie, it's hard to go against them. This should be an absolute banger, though. I'm going to South Carolina. Should be a very close one, though.
Yeah, South Carolina's been great. They've got a good staff. Petrie.
They don't lose at home either. They
really don't. And they've got the National Freshman of the Year on their team. I mean, they're good. In Florida, it's going to be without their closer this weekend, Brandon Neely. I believe he's suspended for 4 games because of that ejection, and he has 7 saves on the year. So
that's insane. That's such bullshit.
Yeah, that's what I believe is the case. But they still have Sproat, Caglione, and Waldrop in the rotation. They all have above 4 ERAs. They haven't been great, but I think that they don't have to be great, because you look at this offense, they're hitting .312 as a team. They have 71 doubles and wait for it, Charlie, 79 home runs as a team.
So many.
Through 37 games. They've truly one of the best teams offensively in the country. Josh Rivera is hitting .399 at this point in the season with 14 homers. Wyatt Langford, .377 with 9 bombs. Jack Caglione leads the country in homers. Cade Curlin, .326. I mean, they can
Bats everywhere.
Yeah, they just bat, and I think they're going to slug their way to a victory. Now, it's tough, like you said, going and traveling to play a great team in South Carolina. But I think Florida, who's 30-7 and 11-4 in SEC play, is ultimately going to just ride that momentum and get the job done after they won two against Georgia. I think they're going to be able to go to Columbia, South Carolina, and hand South Carolina a couple of losses.
We shall see. I'm gonna watch every single game of that series. I'm gonna make sure of it. And then some guys to look at. You mentioned Josh Rivera, 399 average, 14 homers, 52 RBIs. The really outstanding thing though is the dude. First off, hats off to Josh Rivera because he bounced back in a big way this year from last year. We all thought he was gonna have a massive year last year, and he didn't really have that. But the way he's responded has been incredible, and especially to the tune of a 1,252 OPS. That really shows you how much work he's done. He's also got a very good glove as well. And on the South Carolina side, I was going to go with Ethan Petrie, but everybody knows about him. Maybe a guy who's almost as talented as him, but just right there with him in terms of importance to the team. It's Gavin Costas. Tristan Costas is who's the first baseman of the Red Sox. It's his little brother. Costas, Gavin, is hitting 268 with a 1,105 OPS, 15 homers and 38 RBIs on the year for the Gamecocks. There should be a lot of balls out of the park in this series. I'm very excited for it.
And a lot of good stuff on the mound, too. Like I
Yeah.
mentioned, the three starters and Waldrop, Caglione, and Sproat. How about Jack Mahoney, Noah Hall, and Will Sanders?
Yep.
Like all those
Wow.
three
So
starters
much
are
talent.
great. And so and statistically, South Carolina's staff has been better, although Florida is hitting much better as a team than
Yeah.
South Carolina. And it's hard to be hitting much better than South Carolina, who has
Yeah.
hit 86 home runs, but Florida has just been great. But South Carolina's pitching staff, 3.23 ERA as a team. Like they've been great on the mound, and I could see that. You know, they're at home, they're going to pitch, but the pitching's going to be tested. I'll tell you that this week. And we'll see. I know that Florida just won a series against Georgia. South Carolina just lost a series at Vanderbilt. They're coming home. They're mad, but they've got another, consensus top 5 team coming to town. And so at least another consensus top 5 team on the schedule after they played at Vanderbilt. Now they play Florida. Talk about a tough stretch. If South Carolina drops 2 series, I don't think anyone would throw red flags because it's Vanderbilt and Florida. And
Yeah.
South Carolina's right there, but who knows? You pick them to win. I pick Florida to win. That's going to be great. I'm with you there. And just so people know, that's the series in the SEC this week that will start on Thursday. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So Thursday at 7:30, you can be locked into ESPNU where the series will start, and I'll be locked into that for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, sir.
Well, that concludes it, man. The midweek podcast is complete. We recapped the week, picked our picks. Any closing thoughts, Charlie?
No, other than the fact that this is a really fun weekend of matchups because, like, obviously you always want the big name series like South Carolina versus Florida. But I'm a real sucker for the small schools that are really good and have a lot of talent. So the Southern Miss versus Coastal and the Alabama State versus Bethune Cookman should be a lot of fun to watch.
It will be. And we're so glad you guys tuned in. We'll talk to you next week on the midweek podcast